Tamara Caulder Richardson, and welcome to the Seeking Heaven Show.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tamara, and hope you're having a great day, and welcome to the Seeking Heaven channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and like, and make sure you make comments. I try to answer everybody back. Check out the Galactic Origins Cruise.com. If you use my name, you will get a 30-minute free session with me. So make sure you check out that, and also my Academy of Divine Wisdom. Sign up for my newsletter, and you will get, I don't really send out a lot of emails. So, maybe once a month, whenever I have events or whatever going on. I also have some free classes and a free meditation that should relax you, that you can even, once you learn it, can use it in the car. So let me go ahead and bring on our guest. And we have here today Richard Willett. Now he's going to tell us about his background, so I'm not going to repeat it. I'm going to let him do it. But he is a UK filmmaker and an investigative reporter, and he has his own show, an Ickonic, called Classified. So let me bring him on. Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Not too bad. Thank you for having me on.
I'm delighted, and make sure everybody check out me. I was on his channel. I was on actually July 10th. But that was unclassified, so it's already out there, and you can get a monthly or an annual membership. I actually got an annual membership because they have really good content, and you do a lot of work for us as far as the investigative information. And you really, I noticed you try to stay on the pulse, and this is a unique gift that you have to be able to expose these things that are being done against humanity. And so I appreciate that, because that's not everybody's calling. But I want to get into your spiritual journey, because I mean, wow, what you're doing now, I'm sure you didn't start out with going into these deep conspiracy theories. When you started out with your spiritual journey, I guess that, I mean, tell us a little bit about your background and where did you come from? A religious family, no religion, and then kind of lead us into how you got into film.
Yeah, I didn't. My background, my family were not religious in any way, shape, or form. They didn't even look into this thing, so I'm completely out there with my family, totally. My dad knows more than he lets on, but other than that, none of my family are interested in any of these things in any way, shape, or form. So I was always kind of the black sheep of the family, which is that sounds horrible, but my sisters are absolutely lovely. So it's not as if like they're bad people or anything like that. It's just that I just like different things. I was an ill child. Like, I was in hospital at Great Ormond Street for a lot. I was born without an esophagus. Well, born with a gap in my esophagus called an esophageal atresia. So I had a lot of time in and out of hospitals, not allowed to go to school, couldn't be around other children. So I think my imagination.
What does it do? I've never heard of it. What is it?
It's a gap in your esophagus. So when the food goes down, it doesn't go into your stomach; it goes into your lungs. It's not particularly nice. So they'll find it out pretty quick when you're a child, because as soon as you drink milk or have any fluid, it goes straight into you start to aspirate and goes into your lungs. So I've had near-death experiences that we kind of chatted about on my show. Probably maybe more than I remember, but I remember one of them specifically. So yeah, I was an ill child, and I think that just kind of made me just see things different. And I always knew when people were lying. I always knew when people were talking nonsense, and I knew from day one that the parents in the room had no idea what they were talking about any more than the children did. I always knew that, and that always made me laugh. I'm like, you're clueless. Just don't pretend you're not clueless. We'll all get along fine. And I didn't have a lot of time for the theatrics of pretending that everything was fine when they weren't. So, but in terms of looking at this stuff, that came in my sort of early 20s, and that was a very slow burn. It was always, I never subscribed to anything. I don't like being told what to believe or what to think or how to process information. And I always knew that most of what I was being told was nonsense. But in terms of actually looking into things deeper, that was a very slow process of, there was no one moment with me. It was I've actually got the first book I actually read here. It was this one, which is called Wild Things by Reg Presley, who actually wrote, what's that song he wrote? Love Is All Around, and a couple other things. He was part of the band that wrote that, but he went on to write about UFOs and crop circles very early on. He's passed now, and I really wanted to interview him. But this book was the one that I first picked up. I have no idea where I picked it up. Can't remember. I was probably 21, and it just started me just getting interested in this stuff. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And also he started to talk about things like monatomic gold and the fact that they found this ability to create this white powder that was able to kind of regenerate. It was almost like the fountain of youth. And they connected it to the Ark of the Covenant, which and alchemy and smelting and being able to use this powder to live for a long time. And I was like, this is fascinating stuff. This is the information that I believe, like the Essenes that you talk about had. Right. I believe the Magi understand the secret mystery schools of the ancients in terms of the going back to when the age of Saturn, the golden age, through the Mayan culture. I believe that they knew how to make this stuff, and he stumbled across it here, and it was just a fascinating read, and that got me started on learning more. And I was always pick up a book, read that, and then that kind of, in terms of what I do for a living, kind of came together, really.
Yeah, it's interesting how things that you read and then they propel you forward to the next thing. So if you don't mind, can we regress back just for a moment? So we kind of skimmed over that. My people love near-death experience stories, but do you remember some unconsciousness or anything that happened as a child, or did you just have moments that you just can't remember that are blacked out?
No, I do remember. Yeah, I remember one, but it's standard. I was at hospital. I was having some operation. I must have been 7 or 8 at that point. I had a lot of them, and I remember looking down at my body. This classic. You're almost like you're the security camera in the top left-hand corner, looking down on myself, and then but also I could see every like it was like screens were open and I could see things were happening outside the hospital. I could hear everything all at once. What my dad was thinking, what they were saying, what was going on in the hallway, other parts of the hospital. I could see all of this going on all at once, and it was literally, that was the extent of it. Then I was back in my body. But that was the extent of my near-death experiences. But I know I had more. I know I specifically had one where I passed and my dad had to pull congealed milk out of my esophagus when I choked in the bathroom of it. So I know I had more than one, but that's the one I remember. And I was actually on the hospital bed. So I don't know if that was I don't know if they knew that I'd passed, or I was just having an out-of-body experience as opposed to a near-death experience. I'm not sure I think they were probably slightly different, but I had more. They've not come back to me yet.
No,
I've never been one of those ones. Well, never been one of those ones that can like see things and speak to people and hear things. I just don't. Maybe I just have this other way of researching these things and putting bits together. I've got good intuition, but I don't have any. I wouldn't claim to be able to hear things or speak to people or see people. I just something that they've never. Maybe they don't like me. Maybe they've just freaked out.
No, I don't believe that is true. No, my husband says the same thing. He goes, I know I don't, but he's very good he's got a BS detector, and he's really good. Like, you can trust them. They're a good person, or they're sad, or stay away from them, or, he knows immediately like something's wrong with them. And if he doesn't like someone and he knows they're not, honest, he just won't even, he'll barely say hello.
I've had other experiences as well. Like, things have appeared to me. I've had one where I was at a conference when I was filming one of these self-development conferences, which I hated doing, but I worked in the self-development industry, and I was at one of these events where lots of speakers and lots of people pretending they could do things that they possibly couldn't. And there was one person who walked past and they grinned at me, and it was a big tall guy, had sharp teeth when he grinned, and his eyes changed a bit, and he was creepy because he wasn't with anyone else in the room. And then there was a bit where these young girls were doing a dance, and he sat with his chair next to, the dance floor bit was there, the mat was there. But instead of sitting there watching like the rest of us would, he sat next to them on a chair. Really weird. I was
a predator. Like a predator?
But it almost seemed like I was the only person who could see him. But when he turned around and smiled at me and he walked past me, it was an acknowledgement that I knew who he was. And he's had these sharp teeth. I wasn't scared of him. I just thought it was quite amusing. It's like, because I've never been scared of death, so I was like, whatever.
Right.
But I just thought it was he wasn't like everybody else in the room. He didn't behave right. And I do think he was from somewhere else. I believe that he was. That was one of them I had, and I had another couple of UFO experiences. One when I was in my teens, when I was coming back on this long journey in Norfolk, where you go from a place called King's Lynn to where I lived in Thetford. Long journey, and I saw some spaceshipy type craft over near some trees, and then years later, I recall back a memory did come back of me sitting in one chair, it flying over the top of the bus, and you could see from the skylight. And then the next thing I remember, I was sitting in a different chair, but other kids had like acknowledged it too, but I didn't remember that bit till later. I just remembered that I saw them over in the trees. And when I looked it up years later, around about that time it would have been, because I mean I couldn't remember the month, but I could pretty much remember the year. There were sightings in that place of craft as well, so that felt pretty legitimate to me.
What did it look like?
Pretty much just like craft, like almost like they weren't acting like they weren't acting like planes or aeroplanes or anything like that. And it's I mean, I didn't live that far from where the what's the famous one in the UK? In Rendlesham Forest. I don't live that far from Rendlesham Forest.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I live a bit close, a little bit further away now, but I didn't at the time. So they were just like craft, like there, but they were far off enough away they could have been anything, but they weren't moving like spacecraft. They were hovering between the trees.
Got it.
And then that other memory came back later. The other one I had was even more profound to me, because it was only 2 years ago. I was in my bedroom with my now wife, and we were looking up through this, because we had a skylight, and I could see these things darting around, these lights darting around in the stars. I was like, Sam, have a look at that. And she saw them, and they were going like that. But when she looked away, I saw the whole sky light up, you know, like in Star Wars, where they just do like a warp and disappear. Yeah. The whole skylight lit up with stars, the whole sky. But I saw it in my head, and I saw it with my eyes at the same time. And I saw that legitimately. And Sam, my partner, and my wife, she saw the ships in the sky. So I have no doubt there's other things going on. Absolutely. And that was like a confirmation to me. It felt like, not that it was there just for me, but it felt I took it as a little confirmation that I was going the right way in my work, because it was only 2 years ago that happened. So there's other things going on here. Absolutely. So I've seen things, I just haven't, I have experienced them, but they're nothing I could say that I know fully what was going on.
It's interesting, because I saw UFOs 2 years ago too. It was 2 years ago, and my husband saw it too. He's a regular guy. I say regular, he's smart, and wonderful, but he is. I mean, he's not like me, and so he saw it. And he saw it first. He goes, look at that. And there was they call it a pearl. There were several of them, like a string. There was about 5, and there were glowy lights, and they were hovering, following the car, but they weren't like a regular airplane. And I was like, oh yeah, look at that. Like it's like I see it every day. And he goes, but look at that one. I had a big red one that was, looked like a lava ball. Right, and someone who's a UFO expert, Craig Campobasso, said, well, that red lava one, that's maybe their heat source, but that's a common thing. I said, really? But then Mary Rodwell, that I interviewed, said, she's good to have about UFOs, and she kind of fell into this whole area from being a nurse, and now does regression with UFO people. But anyhow, she said that when you see them, so I'm just saying this, I don't know. She said there's a download you get when you see them. I said, well, what do you mean? And she said that they pick you out. They pick you out. They know. They don't need to have you should say that,
because one of the guys who touched the Rendlesham Forest spacecraft, from his account, downloaded this information, that was all in code, really. It wasn't hieroglyphs, but it was something very similar. And it wasn't to a few years later, he would remember it. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see it. So he wrote it down, and someone managed to decipher it, and it was like a message from "We are with you," or "We are looking over you," or something like that. You have to go and have a look, check that out, guys, because I can't remember the specific.
That's interesting.
But after he'd written it down, he no longer saw it. It was almost like he'd offloaded it. He put it into a different space. And we know that this planet, this place we're living in, is plasma. It's information. So it's information
Yes.
field. So we're just putting it back out there into other places. So maybe that ball you saw was a plasma ball, but if we're surrounded by plasma, which is the ether, which is the fifth element that holds it all together, it makes sense. I mean, I think we're starting to understand this stuff. Like, I really do think we're getting to the point now where we've started to understand this, not in a scientific way, because scientism, I mean, science has its place, but it's a tool. There's lots of scientism out there, but I think we're starting to understand the nature of this place. And I think that that's why we're seeing the speeding up of this agenda very, very quickly, because it's starting to, people are getting it now. Enough people are getting it now.
I think so. I mean, you see it just when you go on the social media, and people are they're now becoming, which is interesting, especially this last year. It's been slowly the past 4 years, but they've become whistleblowers for one another and comparing in different parts of the world. Yeah, I've noticed that, and that's pretty exciting. So I think that's why the agenda has gone up, which is making the powers, the cabal, or whatever you want to call it, it's making them, I guess, run scared or whatever, and up the agenda. So
there is a time scale, just to add to that. Sorry, just quickly, there is a time. They call it the Cabal because it comes from Kabbalah, and that comes from the fact that the Kabbalah, the Lurianic Kabbalah beliefs, which Donald Trump, by the way, is one of them. They believe that it's 2224 is the time they've got to get this done before their god Yahweh comes back, enters the Solomon's temple with who's the female Shekinah. And they kind of copulate, and then they produce this kind of antichrist child. So they have a time scale and a time span according to the Kabbalah, which is where Cabal comes from, by the way, obviously. This is what they follow. This is Jewish mystic teachings, and there are several versions of the Kabbalah, but this one particularly is the Lurianic Kabbalah. And as I say, Trump is a Kabbalist. So is Tucker Carlson, by the way, and many others.
Who was the last one you said?
Tucker Carlson, he's a Kabbalist. So is Putin as well. They all are. They all are Kabbalists. They've all studied the Kabbalah. I say study the Kabbalah because, again, it's mystic teachings that people can take anything of, but Lurianic Kabbalah. And yeah, they are. Trump openly says in one of his biographies that he has a very famous teacher of the Kabbalah. So they are following this stuff.
So is it true that they're trying to create this genetically designer Antichrist? Is that what you're saying? That to bring into the world, as for a lack of a better word?
I would say that that's a good shout. I can't say for sure I know anything for certain, but there's enough there for me to be convinced that they believe that if they create with these bloodlines, which you can see in the Merovingian bloodline, you can see in the British royals, which is where I think it's coming from, which is connected to the Spanish royals. So you see Prince William, who is supposed to be pure Merovingian bloodline, which is what you see with the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, so not like narrative. Again, I'm not saying I believe this. This is what they believe.
Right.
You can see with the Rosemary's Baby dress of Diana having to wear it with Princess Diana, and then Kate Middleton having to wear exactly the same dress as the Rosemary's Baby. You think that's not a coincidence. That lady is being used as much as Diana was being used. She was raised on the Sandringham estate to be a womb for this family. Now, I think they're attracting it as much as anybody. This is where we're probably going to the reptilian stuff, but but they believe this stuff. They believe in Saturn. The Balmoral crest has the sigil of Saturn on it. Balmoral is Baal, by the way. So they believe this stuff, and their religion is Satanism. So they are playing their part to bring about this Antichrist vessel for this child, which is going to be their Messiah. So yeah, they absolutely, I believe that there's enough information and enough evidence for me to believe that they believe these things. And you can see what's happening in the Middle East, the push towards Jerusalem and Solomon's temple, the third temple, although I don't believe there was a first temple. You can see that they believe it, and that's enough to be worried about.
So let me ask you this. So much has been changed with the Bible, not to even mention the multiverse. Okay, that's doing it. Words have changed. I know I've had ministers and Buddhists on showing 500-year-old Bibles. We know that, just even that alone. And of course, not to mention the influence with that, with the Cabal, with the Bible and the history of that you talked about on your classified show. But what is holy? I mean, what would you consider holy that hasn't been tainted or twisted by this elite group?
It's a really good question. I just think it's common sense. I just think it's common sense. I don't think it's anything you learn. I think it's, right from wrong when you're little. You know who you're hurting. It's going to hurt someone. Going to upset someone. And right from wrong. Black from white, good from bad, up from down. I don't think you ever need to be taught these things. You just get confused and you get manipulated to try and behave in another way. But I still think you always believe. So what's holy? It's this common sense, which is the truth. And I think every single human being, unless you're cognitively disabled and you have a different, your mind works different, you understand the very nature of what and I think the original text of or the original teachings of the Christians or the Essenes or the Nazarenes even, and the Gnostics to a certain extent, were very simple. They were, what you see is do unto others as you'd have them do unto yourself. I don't think you need to know any more than that. So I think that's what's holy, the truth, which is very, very, very simple.
Ooh,
you just can't market the simple. You can't sell simple. You can't market the simple. You can't. So you have to convolute it. You have to make it difficult. It's the same when you sell a house. Really, you should just be able to go, well, I'll put my money in my bank and you put your money in bank and we'll swap houses. They have to make things just so difficult. That's how they make money. So they take order out of chaos. So it's the holy for me is simple. It's be nice.
Right. It's truth. And what you're saying is just living in our divine birthright, just being, we know right from wrong. And also truth is holy. You're right. That is simple. Either it's right or it's wrong. It's funny. I'm seeing this thing that is actually, I consider that it is very dangerous. And I see it a lot in the spiritual, even the new age community. Not so much with Christians that I've seen, but I see this thing, relativism, where everything's okay, nothing is bad, everything, based on what they know, Hitler made the right decisions based on what he knew. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't fly. That mean, that would say that everyone in prisons, that they all believe they should kill that person. They have the right. And this is very dangerous because we need to know, this is propaganda, that we need to literally know certain things are very right and certain things are very wrong. And so we get into the word evil. A lot of people are losing their capacity to be able to not only just look at, but confront evil. And then we have to ask, what is evil? So I'm going to ask you, what, after doing this work and looking into, and I know you're still in this process too. I mean, things are unfolding and you're still learning, but what do you consider evil?
In terms of what you were saying there with moral relativism, that is incredibly dangerous. That is do what thou wilt. That's Aleister Crowley. That's basically dangerous. The end justifies the means. That's insane. It doesn't, and it never will do. But also, people do know that that's nonsense as well. They just it gives them the ability to act like a complete prat and get away with it and justify it to themselves. Evil is arrogant. Evil is a really difficult. I mean, obviously it's the inversion of live, isn't it? So it's just the other way around of live. So I suppose it is. It's the taking of life. It's the taking of life. It's
right.
The taking of life source. It's taking of someone's joy. It's taking of someone's happiness. It's the taking of someone's freedom to choose. It's that. It's not.
Or perversion of goodness.
Which
perversion
is Satanism.
Of goodness, right?
Yeah. Which is Satanism, which is an inversion. Satanism is an inverted religion. That's exactly what it is.
So how could you sell someone like, hey, how's it going? I'm in the Illuminati, or, I'm a, part of the Luciferian, whatever. I mean, they probably don't approach people like that. But what's the selling point here? I don't see the selling point. I mean, this is, to gain everything at the expense of everybody else. I mean, what's the selling factor here?
Well, some of them will, I believe, that will think like the royals, think that the ends justifies the means, that they're doing the right thing, they're doing God's work, whichever God that they believe.
Yeah,
So they actually have convinced themselves or been brainwashed, brought up in a cult-like scenario that they believe that they're doing the right thing. I don't think many people see themselves as evil. I don't think if you ask a mass murderer, they'll see themselves as evil. They'll see themselves as a damaged person who couldn't help themselves. So what do they get out of it? What's the selling point? The selling point is that, I suppose, if they're materialistic, like Richard Dawkins, who thinks that this is all there is, although can't explain who designed this is all there is, or the thought process it, or the intelligence that makes an atom and a photon into something, and how you can see it in the intelligent design, but between anything, he doesn't actually explain anything. He just says this is all there is, or who designed this. So if you go down that materialistic end, then if this is all there is, then you might as well have as much as you can, because none of it matters on the other end. So that's where your godless world comes from. That's where the God is dead and all of that nonsense comes from. I mean, I'm not religious, so that's a form of, but I do believe there is an intelligence to this place. That's the only thing I believe, is there's a clear intelligence and design and purpose to this place. Now, what that is fascinating and up for debate, but there is an intelligence, there is a design. So if you can convince people that there isn't, and this is all an accident, the Big Bang Theory, which is ridiculous, who created the spark to make the bang, who came up with the concept of the thing banging in the first place, doesn't make any sense. Then you can convince people that if this is all there is, then you might as well get as much as you can.
I got it from their point of view. They don't really see themselves as evil. This is where they're coming from. And actually, I know people like that. Maybe not evil per se as we think, but that's how they operate. They think this is it, so they're going to get as much of the toys they can out there. So that does make sense. Now let's go into the whole thing about. I want to go right there with the reptilians, and I do have. It's interesting. I brought out my older books because you can't even get these on the Kindle. You need to tell Mr. Icke he needs to put these on Kindle.
Okay, you can't get the Trap's fairly new, but the Children, the Matrix is one of my favorites. We've just done a film about that, myself and David, actually, with some of the information from that one, from Children, the Matrix. But anyway, the reptilian stuff.
It's very good. And matter of fact, I think I told you it was over 2 years ago. I had it was Fox News. That's what it was. I mean, it could have been anywhere. I mean, I'm not, banging on them, but it was actually Tucker Carlson asking someone his end on something he's involved with, who's a senator, and he got mad, and his eyes were a gray blue color, older man, and they went from gray blue to black. I was looking at it, and I kind of had to stop. I'm looking, and then they went to horizontal, and I said, stop. So we went back and looked at it like 3 times, and I took pictures of it. I don't know why it's not on my phone. I really have no idea. There was another one a few months later of a younger guy. Same thing. He had brown eyes, but the same thing happened, and it was kind of surprising. So are these reptiles, do you think, real? And why are they trying? And if so, why are they trying to hide from us?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for David. I could tell you from what he's told me and writes in his books, and I can tell you the concept of it and the theory of it. Do I think they're real? I really don't know. I've never seen it with myself, although I have seen that guy with the jagged teeth, and I believe that he was somewhere else.
Weird.
And I don't think he didn't have jagged teeth when I looked at him later on, so I think he was moving. I think it's from what David talks about, and this makes sense to me. If it's perception shifting, so they're not shifting. Nothing. We know that nothing's solid. We do know that. We know that it's just the vibrations of the atoms that change the solidity of something, which makes materialism ridiculous, because who designed that system? So what's happening is that these beings are able to take over certain bloodlines because they have a dual DNA, and this is where you get the serpent bloodline, the black nobility bloodlines. You get the serpent cult, serpent race, and they're able to possess these bloodlines easier because they have a dual DNA. And then we know that they call themselves the blue bloods. We do know that they have a different blood, and if you combine blue blood, the blue and blood of theirs with the red blood of ours, you get the purple of Saturn. So that's significant. That's also what in significant in the symbology of politics, the two-party state. You get red and blue because you combine the two colors, you get the color of Saturn, and because they both control both of them, it's a Saturn system. And I've tried to explain that to people. That's why they're blue and red, because that's the Saturn system, because they actually work
one
together.
and the same.
They're one and the same. So these guys are from David's concept, and other people have spoken about this. There's so much information. He's seen people, even the former Prime Minister, do this. And I've obviously seen the videos of it. I've never seen anyone do it in person. But the principle is that obviously we don't live in a solid world. We live in a world of everything is an illusion. It's what we're seeing, the photons with our eyes. We know everything is moving and there's no solidity. These beings from this other dimension, which is close to ours, are able to briefly take over these bloodlines because they've been bred to have a dual bloodline. So when they shapeshift, like the British Royals and others, what you're seeing is not them physically shifting because nothing's physical. You're seeing a perception shift. That's exactly what you're seeing. So that's the theory of shape shifting. It's not physical shifting, it's perception shifting. And I think that's probably a better way of putting it. So I've never seen it, but the symbology is there. Now these we know that they do these sacrificial rituals, and it seems to be in these sacrificial rituals they open up portals to other worlds where these beings can come through, and that's why we see the sigil of Saturn on the Balmoral crest. That's why we see the satanic symbolism in the music industry all over Hollywood. Hollywood is a satanic system built on a system that was from Nemi in Rome, and if you look at the hills in Nemi in Rome, they are the Hollywood Hills. It was around a lake called Diana's Mirror. Diana, again, is another name for Semiramis, Isis, Statue of Liberty. All the same thing. It's the goddess. It's not even the goddess. It's the Queen Semiramis. It's the Holy Ghost type character, which goes back to Ninkasag in the Anunnaki. So this is the Virgin Mother part of it. So this all goes back in. So they do these rituals to bring these beings forth, and they're either able to manifest very briefly in this realm, or they're able to take over and possess one of the bloodlines. Now that's not including, that seems to be, from what I can understand, separate from the actual reptilian races that appear here in different guises on Earth, and we see that in the Anunnaki, some of the symbolism. So it seems to be, not to say these archons that possess the royals aren't possessing these reptilian races as well. It's but there is a difference between the physical reptilians that are here. Again, I've never seen any. I've never seen any evidence of any, and I would be lying if I said I did. But I don't believe. I'm not beyond believing that they exist, especially in some underground bases that especially near New Mexico and New York, they seem to be riddled with something. The symbology is there. It's very, very interesting.
So there was a lady that I had on from the UK. Gosh, I can't think of her right now. And she was talking about that she was a paranormal investigator, and that she had people in a base that came, and that they actually worked in an underground base, military base, and said their coworkers shifted and changed before her. So getting back to this shift, why is it that some people you think that can see them and some people can't, because they can't seem to cloak or that vibration? Do you think that someone at a higher vibration can see it? I've seen someone change. I've seen someone turn into a snake person.
Okay, well, I think it's probably what you're open up to, what your perceptions allow you to see. But I mean, like, I could say that, but I read all this stuff and I've never seen it myself, so I don't have the answer for that. It fascinates me as much as why you could see it and I couldn't. Absolutely fascinating why you can hear people and I can't. And I say that with my wife, who says she can speak, she hears people and sees people, and she's a very, very quiet introvert type person who would never want to have say that to people. It's not as if she's doing it for attention. So I don't know the answer why some can. It would make sense that just some people are more susceptible to those in some ways, or a trauma event. I think that has something to do with it. Almost cracks you open. I do believe that
opens you up.
Yeah. And maybe I just don't need it. Maybe my path is to do the logical nuts and bolts research part of it, and I don't need that
And
yet.
maybe I think that sounds fair. Check out the show Classified, and also you have a YouTube channel which is Classified Richard Willett. We have it down below. Thank you so much for your time. You're doing an outstanding job, and also see my interview on the Essenes where we do talk, and you even put some clarity in there. And I look forward to following your career and seeing all the things that you expose, and hopefully you can help bring down this house of cards. So thanks, Richard.
Well, thank you for having me on, and whenever you want me to come back on, I'm more than happy to come and chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.